This conference will now be recorded.
So welcome to this morning's training, and thank you, Kathy North, for doing this. Kathy's with CASA of Oklahoma County, and when I was looking for someone who could, do volunteer recruitment and training, which is certainly a recruitment and support, certainly something that I'm very interested in, and I know Kim and Christina are, and hopefully every PARB board chair across the state is. And we do have a lot of people that can't always make these because of, working in the day, but we always record them and send them back out. So we actually have a bigger audience than you can tell right now. So well, just some of the housekeeping. I think everybody's pretty old hat at this, but please mute if you're not talking. It's always nice, if you want to talk or whatever, to share your camera. And then there's a little chat feature, that little circle in the top right, if you want to type in a question or something like that. So with that, Kathy, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Okay, awesome. Well, thanks so much for having me. This is one of my favorite topics. And so I'm excited to do it. I'm very familiar with PARB. I've been with CASA for 12 years. And so we've definitely seen a lot of, PARB reports and files and things like that. And so I think it's that bird's eye view is so important, because when you're in the weeds, you miss stuff. And so I love that the piece of the puzzle that PARB provides. I think it's so necessary. And if I'm looking over here, I've got my presentation over here, and then so but my camera's over here. So I promise I'm not just staring off into space over here. But some of these I've kind of adapted from a lot of the concepts that we've done. We really revamped our whole philosophy and practices on recruitment and on screening, and really taking a peek at what it is that keeps people and doing this long term. Just it's nice to kind of share some of this information. So we'll get started, but stop me, ask questions along the way. I don't know all the, I know what you all do, but I don't know all the ins and outs of how you recruit and how you assign people and all of that stuff. So if you need to know something a little different than what I'm saying, or discuss something different, let me know. But so just to tell you, if you aren't familiar with CASA, it stands for Court Appointed Special Advocates. Our CASA volunteers we recruit, we screen them, we train them, and we support them as they serve as child advocates on these child welfare cases. So I'm sure you've seen CASA reports and things like that in a few of your files as you review and things like that. So if you have any questions about that, let me know, but I'll move on to the nitty-gritty of the content. So when we start, it's good to take stock, really good, honest stock, like where are we now versus where we want to be. And so when you're thinking about the people that you want to attract and that you want to bring in as additional PARB members, like think best case scenario, because those people are out there, and it's just figuring out what is that person we want, and how do we get them. So the best way to do is really think about who are the PARB members we have that are the best PARB members. They are the ones that they stick around, they're dependable, they show up, they do what they say they're going to do, and they complete it, and they are really providing that quality service for these cases and for those files. And so and what is it that makes them so good? Is it the fact that they always show up? Is it the fact that they're thorough and they don't miss stuff, or they find stuff that other people have missed? Is it that they show up to meetings and are prepared and offer insight during those meetings, and it's obvious that they have prepared? Really seeing, really deciding what it is you want in a really ideal PARB member, and then saying, where did we find them? How did we get them in the first place? How did they come across PARB? And then just asking them, what keeps you with PARB? What keeps you doing this? And I'll tell you, one thing I've discovered, at least with CASA, is that our really good CASA volunteers are not afraid of hard work. These are not people who shy away from doing really hard stuff. But what bothers them is to feel like their time is not being used wisely. And so that's kind of a mindset that we were able to pinpoint. And so I'd encourage you to do the same thing with your best PARB members. What is that mindset we're after? And then appealing to those people. And figuring out like what brought you in and what keeps you here. And so that can just be calling people up and asking, and they'll usually talk because they are very complimented that you're like, we want more of you. So, and sometimes that gets them to, well, I have a friend who's like me who might be interested, so you never know. How well known are you in the community? Now, a lot of people, you don't know they exist, and you don't know they exist, but they might make great PARB members. And something similar with CASA is that so much of what we do, like when you get into the details, is confidential. You can't tell it's hard to tell compelling stories in a way that is a breach of confidentiality. And so sometimes we have to get creative in doing that. But do people recognize the name of your organization? If people say PARB or Post Adjudication Review Board, do they have any idea what you're talking about by and large, outside of the child welfare system? And if they recognize it, what comes to mind? So that's something that we have really, really had to take an honest look at ourselves a few years ago, is what is our reputation? What do people think of when they think of us? And, and addressing it from there, whether it was complimentary or not, or do they just have no idea who we are? Do you want to increase recognition? Is that something that you want to do? Or do you want to just reach out to certain people who you know of, or continue to recruit in the way you have, as far as others who might already know? So that's something that, do we want to just be more well known, or do we want to be viewed differently also? And deciding what those goals are. So managing your reputation, and a lot of these things I took from a national presentation I did for National CASA, for staff members, recruitment and training staff, for National CASA. And there's some of these could apply to a program who has had something crazy happen that made the news. We all know it's possible. And is there damage control? Have you received any negative publicity? I've never heard any negative publicity about PARB, so that's good. But are you just too well kept a secret? And that was an issue that we had, years back, as well. People just did not know who we were, and that is not an overnight thing to do to get past. It just isn't. But it can. But it's something that you just do piece by piece. And it's also recognizing, like, there are things that you can do organically for free, social media, things like that, without having that expensive professional marketing help. The only time we've been able to do any kind of professional marketing help was when we got a grant allowing us to just for that. Otherwise, there's no way. So I'll tell you kind of the recruitment philosophy we have here at CASA that, and we really overhauled. About 3.5 years ago, I moved into this position of director of recruitment, and so I do all the recruiting and the screening, and then I help out with training. And we really we decided we're just gonna, start fresh. Why not? And really dig deep and evaluate. But building those relationships and that rapport, because the reason people do things like PARB, and the reason people do things like CASA, or the reason they foster, the reason they get into this kind of thing, is because they have a heart for it and they want to influence positively. They want to do something about it. I think that's one of the hardest things about child abuse and neglect, right? Or hearing about it or knowing about it, is it's like that helpless feeling that follows. Like, what could I possibly do without having a crystal ball and knowing there's something terrible happening a mile from me that I could go right now and intervene. That's not a thing. And so people are, I think, sometimes want to know ways they can help and ways they can make that better. You know, for ours, we wanted to diversify. You know, our families and our children are diverse, and we want to do, you know, reflect that best we can. That is definitely something that we wanted to look into and really recruit, like people of color, LGBTQ community, you know, anyone that could like reflect more Native American causes. That's something we're really talking about right now. And I know that you all, at least you have, I feel like you all have like people who specialize in like the domestic violence or people who write or the Indian child welfare cases and stuff like that, and they kind of make that their specialty, or they have a particular understanding of that, where they can focus on that, which is great. And so it's, you know, that might be a great way for you to find people too, you know, through the tribes or through, you know, people who also volunteer for the YWCA and have some knowledge and understanding of domestic violence, things like that. Education over coercion. I think PARB and CASA have this very similar. This is not the kind of thing you talk somebody into doing. It just isn't, because what we've found is if you coerce somebody into doing this and talk them into it, and you know, you're not gonna do their best, and they're not gonna stick around for a long time. By and large, you never know, maybe they will, but typically they won't. And so what we're wanting to do is inspire them and empower them and give them all of the information they need in order to decide, is this something I can do and do well? Does this fit my passion? Because those people are the ones that will stick around and the ones that will do a good job and the ones that will show up. You know, with CASAs, there's a lot of fears. What if this? What if that? What if this? What if that? And doing that education, that there's always somebody to ask questions to. There's, you know, you have these protections, you have this kind of training. This is the situation. We can ease a lot of those fears or affirm the things that make them nervous. You know, they ask, am I going to get emotionally involved? And we're like, oh yeah, yep, you will. And that's what our kids need, is somebody who wakes up at night wondering if they're okay. And I think, and I know the role of PARB is different than the role of CASA, but I think that same thing applies. It's an emotional thing. Reading through those, I've read through a lot of those files myself, and it can be a journey that keeps you up that night, doing that. And so I think it's being very honest about that and saying, yeah, it's hard. Most really worthwhile things are. And it's deciding, you know, does this fit my passion, and am I willing to do this hard thing in order to make a difference? And so it's giving them that. And you also set a precedence there of, you know what, these people aren't just filling me with sunshine and daisies to try to get me to do this. No, they're being real with me. They're answering my questions honestly. And if they might think, you know, if I can expect that during my time volunteering, then that's compelling. It really is. And managing those expectations, being very clear about what's expected. You know, here's this workload we give. Here's what we expect you to do. When we come together and meet, here's how you need to be prepared. Because the right people really want to do a good job. In fact, what I see a lot, a fear I hear of a lot, is that people are, it's so important to them that they're fearful of not doing a bad job. You know, and we want to say, you know what, if you're afraid you won't do a good enough job or you won't do right by these kids, what that tells us is that you take this seriously and that you're gonna put effort into making sure you do a good job. And that really eases people's minds. They're like, you're supposed to be nervous about this. This is child welfare. This is hard. This is people's lives. This is child safety. So yeah, you being nervous is very appropriate, and that's okay. So really affirming that, you know, and saying, oh, don't worry about it. It's fine. It's really not that hard. Well, it can be hard. So so managing those expectations and making sure people always know exactly what to expect and exactly what they're signing up for. And then we discuss addressing those fears and apprehensions, either saying, yeah, that is something to think about, or saying, you know what, that's actually not something you'll really encounter, and here's why. So,
Hey, Kathy, before you go into the targeting recruitment, I just want to tell you a little bit about what our membership actually looks like, and this is great stuff. We have a, and I can share that later if we have time, which we probably will. But the University of Oklahoma did a study of our kind of membership, and we are overwhelmingly white, overwhelmingly female. Most folks are retired, and we certainly have an older group. So,
sure.
Which is great. I mean, people that are retired have more time. A lot of people are retired from child welfare system and stuff like that. But obviously, it would be nice to have some other perspectives, male, minority, and younger too. So I hope people keep that in mind. So FYI, just wanted to share that. Oh, and one other thing while I'm talking. So our statutes also say that we're supposed to have folks with child welfare experience, someone on the board, and we're supposed to have folks with either current or former foster parents. So those of you who don't know that, keep that in mind too. We tend to get a lot of those people, but you also have to be kind of targeted on that too. So anyway, I wanted to mention that before you go into the targeted recruitment.
Perfect. Yes, it's when you say, oh, predominantly white, predominantly female, skewing older, like that sounds very familiar to me with CASA. You just recognize, and the last thing you want to do is alienate those people, because this is people who've been serving your kid, and so like, there is nothing wrong with older white women. I am well on my way to being an older white woman myself, like no problem. But as we grow, we want to make sure that we are growing in ways that are that diversify and give that, like you said, that broader perspective. And that is that difference between passive recruitment and targeted recruitment. When you so word of mouth and personal reference is a wonderful it's a wonderful tool for recruitment, because who knows who's going to be a better PARB member than another PARB member, that, oh, you would totally do this, you'd be great at it, that's so compelling. But people tend to have friends that are similar to them, and so you kind of get more of the same. So it's a double-edged sword. So it's being open about your goals with your members too, in a way that doesn't alienate anybody, because there's more than, gender, race, and age that give you different perspectives. I mean, there are different life experiences and different cultural experiences and ways of doing things that don't have anything to do with those things. So, socioeconomic backgrounds and things like that can be very compelling, or somebody who was in foster care themselves as a child and experienced that. And so those perspectives can be so useful, incredibly. So we've definitely started to target and reach out and be deliberate in how we reach out. We've always been a member of the Greater Oklahoma City Chamber of Commerce since before I was here, for sure. And it's just been the last 3 years, or about 4 years ago, that's how recently we joined the Black Chamber of Commerce and the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. And it's like those basic things are saying, we want to start to show up in these communities. And you don't ignore a community for decades and then come to a meeting or two, you've got to show up and keep showing up. And so that's, I'll say one area we've had great success in the last few years is age. we've got a lot of CASAs in their 20s, 30s, 40s now, a lot. We've started really trying to establish a relationship, and this might work for you all too, actually, with OCU Law School. I would reach out to, specifically, her name is, if you're in this area, Carol North, no relation, we just happen to have the last name. But they have to do volunteer hours, those students, you know, and for those who, I mean, PARB might be really interesting to them. So something to think about, but we've had a lot of luck there. So this is kind of a gross analogy, but it but it kind of works. It gives you the right picture of, you know, passive recruitment. Well, I'm going to set up there's my web, and we'll see what comes along. It could be grass from the lawnmower, or it could be my supper. I don't know. And so that's what, and you know what? Passive recruitment is part of it. You don't want all your eggs in one basket. Yeah, leave your web up for sure. But also, you know who you want, where you want to grow, what kind of experiences you want. You've taken the time to learn. Here are the kind of people that make these really great PARB members, and have the insight that we need to do a great job evaluating, and use that bait and go to that pond. So that is a really important thing with that targeted recruitment. And then we'll still have people say, I've been thinking about this for years, and I just retired, or I just saw something on Facebook and decided now's the time. You know, you just never know. So leave the web up for sure. So recruitment practices, again, when you're recruiting, you are not only giving them the information they need and trying to, you know, seeing if they're appropriate for you all as well, but you're letting them know what the culture of your organization is. You're letting them know how you function. So when you get back to them right away, you are thorough in how you answer their questions, you're honest with them, and you show appreciation and tell them how much it means that they're even asking. Those are the things that make people, okay, this is the kind of place where I think I could do some good, you know. But if they never get back to you, you know, there was another organization, it was like a pet adoption fostering organization, and I was like, I think I want to volunteer with them, and I didn't hear back from them. I filled out the form twice and didn't hear back from them for 3 months. And I was like, I don't feel like they would use my time well. And so this is something that those things, you can establish that culture of your organization at that point and say, where they're like, okay, because those, again, same with CASA, like, these aren't people who want to waste time. These are people who are willing to do hard stuff, but it better be effective. And you can kind of establish that feeling with them right off the bat. So prospects may be long-term, like I just said. Like, we've had people who've been thinking about being CASAs for years. And maybe the same is true with PARB, I would think. Like, oh, when my last kid goes to college, or, you know, when I finish this master's degree or something, I'll have a little more time and I can get into this. So don't write people off if they've been thinking about it for a long time. Keep them in the loop and make them feel that they are already part of your organization. The fact that they care about what you do, and the fact that they think that's something they might want to put some work into, let them already feel like a part of the PARB family. Let them already feel like they're one of us, and keeping them in the loop. The fact that they are thinking about it, or have thought about it, or have had a conversation with you, or have listened to a presentation from you, means that they know stuff that others don't know. They get that email every quarter that says, here's what's going on, here's what we have available, do you have any questions, blah, blah, blah. It's amazing how effective that kind of thing is. And we'll talk about that sense of community and when it comes to retention too.
Sure. One thing that I think we're kind of learning, I know Christina's doing it more, is we invite potential volunteers to the actual meetings and kind of get a sense of it. Because it really is a big waste of time if you have people go through our application process, which is pretty extensive. I'm sure very similar to CASA. And then you know, they finally become a member and they attend a meeting and they just realize that it's just not for them, you know. I mean, we have guest confidentiality forms. They need to sign those, but they are available.
Yeah,
To have a sense of it. Anyway,
that's a great
encourage
idea.
folks out there to do that. If you've got a recruit, you can invite them to a meeting. Just make sure they sign the form.
That's perfect. I think that's a similar reason for us for not wasting money. I wait till somebody has attended 2 training classes before I run their background check because I'm like, I'm not going to spend money on you and then you never show up to class. Like, you know, and that's just being a good steward of donor money and stuff like that. But yeah, that's a great idea. Like, you know, you don't want to waste your time or theirs. So most people have both of these. They want to be effective because of their feelings and their passions, and they feel what they're feeling through this situation and their desire to help. But again, you're wanting to attract those people who will do hard things but don't want to waste their time. So when you have statistics or even just like anecdotal information, you know, little tidbits of, you know what, you know, like for instance, this one PARB member reading through this file saw something in there that everyone else had missed, or saw a pattern that no one else knew about, or went back and read the part of the file that no one that's on the case now was on the case then. It's had complete turnover and they don't know this stuff, and I do. And maybe tell some little successes from that and some things that, you know, kind of collecting that anecdotal, you know, information about that shows, that demonstrates, you know, the credibility and demonstrates the value. And, you know, you can get outside too, you know, like, you know, if there's a judge who was like, something was pointed out in the PARB report that I had no idea about, or whatever the case may be, or if it's a foster parent who's like, man, I had a really great conversation with a PARB worker who called me to clarify some stuff. Like, that is some of those just little sprinkles on an information sheet can be, or on your website, can be very compelling because it's from outside of you giving that credibility, like a reference. You know, if you're checking their references and you know, you're checking their references, and this is like them checking yours. So, and like I said, no one's got a better PARB member, you know, going to be a better recruiter than a PARB member. You know, no matter how, as a staff person, no matter how passionate I am, no matter how genuine I am in my desire to have good child advocates, I will never have the credibility that a CASA volunteer does. Never. And that's how it should be. That's how it should be. So it's nice to have those handful of people who are willing to take an extra step and maybe talk with somebody who's thinking about it and stuff like that. So or do some like frequently asked questions that are even if it's just something that you create a document that's frequently asked questions answered by both you know, a PARB member and one of you all. And so they get both perspectives. Things like that are very compelling to people. And using diverse methods and getting out the word, you know, got to spread out those eggs, man. Like social media, your website, giving presentations, person-to-person contact, personal referrals, all of it gets people to you, and it's all important. And otherwise you miss people. And like I said, you know, we've had people that have come to us and said, oh, my friend told me about it years ago, and then I saw a billboard and I started thinking about it again, and then I saw something online, one of your digital ads, and you know, and it just like all that together, they're like, okay, fine, I'll call. Okay, fine, I'll fill out that application. And that's great because again, that's someone who's put some thought into it. That was not an off the cuff, on a whim, sure, why not decision. So having those diverse methods, it gets people because it makes them feel like they're surrounded by it and they're like receiving some sort of like, the universe is telling them time to be a PARB member, you know, so it can kind of create that. So collaborating with other organizations is something that is a great organic way to become more well known, not only that you exist, but what it is you really do. You know, people tell me all the time, oh, I've heard of CASA. I've heard of CASA. And I know that you like advocate for children, but they don't know anything else. They don't know the nitty gritty. Like, what does a CASA do? What is that role? And so having people in other organizations that maybe have some overlap or some relation to what it is you all do, and then their staff and their people have a better understanding of what you do, they can tell people about it. It's all that also makes you fresh on their minds, you know. So say if I am talking with somebody who you know, maybe is like, you know what, I don't know if I have it in me to be coming to court all the time, and to be visiting these kids and going into those foster homes every month and all that, blah, 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 blah. I want to help, but I don't want to do all of that end of it quite so much. Well, if PARB is fresh on my mind, you know, I can say, you know what, you might look into PARB. And then if you've equipped me, if you've stayed fresh in my mind, and you've equipped me with, here's the person to call, you know, then I might do that. This is already somebody who's passionate about this, and it's a bit of a personal referral. So collaborating with other organizations is great. And we've done a lot of that with other nonprofits in the area, you know, like Pivot and YWCA and Sunbeam, and you know what, it kind of boils down to doing cross training, saying, hey, you know, could we do a training for you all, and you do a training for us, and that way we can know a lot about each other's organizations and learn about what it is you do, and benefit from that knowledge. But it's also just making friends with them. We, for a while, before COVID started, we got in the habit of inviting people from other nonprofit organizations. We would challenge them on social media to trivia, and go to trivia nights around the city. And you know what? These people became our friends. Our staff was friends with their staff. And you don't ever want to, first of all, that's a lot of fun. I mean, come on. But it's also, they know about CASA. Now they have a personal investment in CASA, because these are their friends that work there. And it's that same kind of thing. Also, and I don't know how your funding works. I don't know if you all do like fundraising from individual donors and stuff like that, but foundational donors in particular, like larger donors, love that. And so you want to be really open about it. Put it on social media. Talk about it in your grant writing. You know, here's how we've collaborated. They love that, because it makes them feel they get more bang for their buck. Or like, it also lends some credibility. You know, if all these other organizations that have credibility know who you are and know what you do, you know, that puts you in that same category as them. And so somebody who doesn't know a lot about you will also be like, oh, well, they're like on this tier. And that's important, that they can have that broad perspective of, this is a legit organization, like they're along with these people. So so you may be surprised at how much, just like you know, and PARB is kind of like CASA, where what you do is pretty unique and pretty specific. Like, there's not other organizations that really do that, and which is cool. But when it comes to working in the world of child welfare, I think we all know it takes a lot of organizations. There are a lot of pieces of that pie to get eaten, and so it's easy to kind of find those other organizations and be and have that crossover. And then you're sharing each other's stuff on social media, and then you get more follows, and your footprint on social media can grow significantly in that way if you do the social media, which is a great thing to do because it's free. Just takes a little time. So stop me if I'm going really fast or whatever. But so talking about,
just good information.
Okay.
Really good information.
So self-screening is the first line of screening, you know, and Keith, it's just what you were saying, inviting somebody to a meeting and seeing this is what it looks like. And then they can decide, oh, this is or isn't for me, to see it in practice. And so I think that's a good part of self-screening. and being very open about what's required. Hey, we're going to do background checks. These are the things that are deal breakers. If you've had a open child welfare case, you can't be a CASA. If if you have, a pattern of multiple felonies, that would likely eliminate you. Things like that, and just being very open about that from the get-go. And they might just quietly see themselves out the door, but giving them the opportunity to do that. Self-screening is very important. So
yeah, we definitely have that issue as well. And
Yeah.
space is an issue too, because our I kind of figured all this out by trial and error, mainly error. But a lot of local community PARB boards, they may have only like 5 members, but these are 5 members that they feel really comfortable with, and they're not really interested in adding somebody. So I might get excited about adding someone to a particular PARB board, but the local judge, and it has to go through them. Isn't there, or the chair may not be really interested in adding somebody. So I've learned to kind of just say, well, there's a lot of gaps between your application and getting final approval.
Yeah, it sounds like they've got to be sold to the committee.
Well, the local judge has to sign off on it, which most
Sure.
of the time they do. They have the ear of the local chair, so if the local chair doesn't want them, then the judge isn't going to approve them.
That's the person they know, and
and then they have to pass that OSBI background check, and then our director has to sign off. So there is a lot of hoops.
Yeah. Well, and there should be. And there should be. I mean, it's they might, with us, we worry about, this person is going to have a lot of access and is allowed to be alone with very vulnerable children. Like, I'm going to be a hawk.
Right. Well, and we have quorum issues too. I mean, we are different. We're not a nonprofit. We're a state program, so we don't have to worry about the funding you were talking about. But we have to fall under the Open Meetings Act all the time. So if we add a member, we're adding challenges to our quorum. So if we add somebody, they got to come. Yeah, Kim's going to preach it. But yeah, if you're going to come,
I think the quorum is one of our biggest challenges. I would love to see PARB be taken out of that executive session requirement, so that at least we have the opportunity to at least provide, because since we had to start our in-person meetings, I've already had 2 boards not be able to meet quorum. Now, part of that is because it's vacation time and we have a lot of members out for the summer. It's related to COVID. They're just still not comfortable attending, a larger, even with, the requirements to wear a mask and social distance, and the quorum part is very challenging, because if we get members that aren't dedicated, then it really impacts our ability to meet. And I don't know, I struggle. I've already removed 1 member. I have a few more that I think I may have to look at, because it impacts our ability to do what we need to do.
Yeah, if you can't make, if you're not going to show up, don't do this. And maybe it's like letting people know, like, it's same with, like, you know what, stand me up for your interview, stand me up to meet for coffee and talk about CASA, that's fine. But I don't care, that's whatever. But I'm also going to be like, I'm not going to put you in the position to do that to a kid. Sorry. It's that same thing, like, show up, it's important. And that can be part of that pre-screening. Like, it's almost like, tell them all the things that if it's going to scare them away, let's go ahead and scare you away now. It's like, if you can't make these meetings, then we're going to look at removing you. And how embarrassing is that? And so, and kind of appealing to people that way. That's hard. That's really hard and so frustrating. Like, why did you sign up to do this if you're not going to do it? So yeah, that self-screening, can be a courageous conversation.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
on
I'm sorry.
our PARB applications has a sheet that is a commitment to participate.
Yeah.
And, you know, it has the 3 years and all of that stuff. And I think that maybe some members just sign it, not actually realizing what it is they're signing. I mean, is it legally binding? No, but it's in there and it's signed. So if you're not ready to make that commitment, let me know now, you know?
Yeah. And if you're not, it's okay. Most people couldn't, you know, that's okay. What's not okay is saying, yeah, I'll do it and then not. That's the only thing that's not okay. Yeah. And that can sometimes be a courageous conversation of, you know, and I don't know if you're set up in a way where you can say, hey, can you tell me, I saw you signed this. Thank you so much. Can you kind of tell me your understanding of it just to make sure we're on the same page?
Well, and I've started meeting with potential volunteers. I won't even provide an application or an opportunity to, I do give them the opportunity to observe a meeting, which I think is very helpful. They don't necessarily get they don't get as good of an idea about what work goes into that meeting by just observing, but it's a start. And then I've started just doing a personal screening. It's more or less I've found with some of the people, even Christine is right, we have that in the application. And this is going to sound very, I don't want this to sound bad. It's just been my personal experience. You know, these individuals approach you about volunteering. And so you think it's something that they're kind of passionate and committed about. And then life just sometimes gets in the way, you know, and it happens. And I've tried to tell all my volunteers, you know, if you are unable to participate, that is okay. If life circumstances change, just let me know. We can talk about it. We can put a solution in place. We can maybe put you on hiatus, you know, for a few months. And give you an opportunity to work through the challenge you're having. I have 2 that are doing that right now, one that's diagnosed with breast cancer and one that just recently changed to a new job. They don't want to quit, but they can't participate for a few months. And so we work through those challenges. It's that I think some people get involved and then it's, I don't know, they don't know how to adult very well. they don't know how to time commit and calendar and schedule. And then I don't know if they're too afraid to have those conversations or what, and they just kind of ghost. So those are the ones I think that are the trickiest. Even the one lady we removed, I never even heard from her on the removal. I mean, nothing, like not a word. And you're just kind of like, oh my goodness. Those are people I'm not sure you can really do anything about, you know. It just
no. And sometimes it surprises you so much with like there's people that you are like, oh, they're gonna be so good. Like they said all the right things, they got back to you quickly, all of that. You didn't see the red flags, and they're just like, it's like, God, you're a good big talker. Because it's hard. And I think it's like, I mean, we can do all we can to like see those, well, there's red flags and I call them pink flags, you know, but again, like we don't have a crystal ball, and it's hard to, you know.
I've kind of learned to look for resume builder people that want to be on a PARB board because they want to put it on their resume, but they really don't want to be on PARB. It's like, I don't mind if they're using this as a resume career builder, but there's the part of participating though that you have to do too.
Do a good job. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. There needs to be a genuine work ethic there along with that, like a certain like character level that says I want to actually really earn the things that make me look good on my resume. I want to actually look good because I am good, meaning I need to actually do this. And so that's a level of character, and that can be hard to detect, I think, that intention of really putting in the work to have the experience you say you have. That's hard. So it's almost like there are times when it almost feels like you're talking someone out of it, you know, and you don't want to discourage somebody who's excited to do it and would be good. That's the last thing you want, and it can feel counterintuitive, but it's real. And that's one thing I want to talk about. this just spoke to me so much. I was listening to KGOU one morning, and this was like several years ago, and they were talking about Teach for America when Teach for America first got started. And it's if you participated in Teach for America, that is a really good resume item, right? Like that's like only the cool kids get to do Teach for America, right? You've got to be pretty impressive. Well, at first that wasn't necessarily the case based on this report I heard on the radio that, they're asking for the sake of getting good experiences, these newly educated educators to, work in these schools where the children, have lower income and there are different difficulties and fewer resources and a lot going on that made it a little harder to do for not a lot of money, but just to get the experience and have it on your resume. Well, they were pretty open about who they accepted, and they could not get enough people to fill what they wanted to fill. People were not applying, not seeing that as beneficial. And this, I'm sure, felt counterintuitive to some of them, but instead of broadening who they would accept and getting lax on like their criteria, they went the opposite direction. They're like, you know what? We only want the best of the best anyways. We only want you if you've done this, this, and this, and have this GPA, and I've done this and this and this. And all of a sudden, everyone and their mom wanted to go to Teach for America because there's exclusivity, and it meant something. It meant I'm one of the best. Like I've been determined to be of very high quality because I was selected to be Teach for America. It's quite the reference. It's quite the indicator to grad school or a PhD program or an employer that they've been through Teach for America because of their requirements to even get into Teach for America. And so that just spoke to me, and I've been talking about the Teach for America effect ever since. And I think it's okay because of that. I think it's great to talk about, to do this. We're going to really check you out. We're going to really talk to your references. The judge has to say yes. The person, just really talk it up and be like, this is a high level volunteer position. It is very official. The court's involved. You have access to information that the public does not have access to. Very few people have access to the information you're going to have access to. And that requires a lot of screening on our part. So the people who are PARB members, it's because they are high level, they are high quality volunteers. This is the cream of the crop when it comes to people who give their time to volunteering, and being very open about that. And if someone's like, that's intimidating, I'm going to go away. Well, you know what? That's somebody who walks away when it's hard. And sometimes showing up to meetings when you're already busy is hard. And so that's okay. That's the screening. And maybe that's hard at first, and maybe that throws people off at first, but eventually, if you can really talk about that and get that out in the community, that this is a exclusive type of a thing to be able to do, like it's a compliment to be on a PARB board, it'll have that effect. And so anyways, I was so glad I listened to that instead of like a podcast that morning. And because it really spoke to me. I thought it was I was like, you know what, that's real. That's real. Giving them that sense of pride and exclusivity. Well, I'm on par, and I say that to people when they're looking at CASA and say, this is hard work, and people who know what CASA is are impressed when you tell them you're a CASA. Because if they know what it is, they know it's hard work, and they know we screen heavily. And so you're wanting to create that and have more and more people know that. So yeah, I love the Teach for America effect. I think it's truly real, but I don't think very many people do it because it just doesn't feel right at first. It doesn't feel like the direction you want to go at first. So, you all have told me some things that I didn't know when writing this about your screening process and the judge and all of that. But some things that I really like to look at are they upfront with me? Am I, did they we ask certain questions in our application, and then during our interview where there really shouldn't be surprises in a background check. But if there are, that's a discussion and that's a red flag. Because not necessarily because they have this in their past. If we're looking for perfect people, we won't end up with anybody. But it's that character, I asked and you didn't tell me. And yeah, it's hard to tell somebody, yeah, I had this happen and I made this mistake and here's what that meant for me. But we asked, and so I think that's a big red flag just for character purposes, even if it's not a super serious offense. So we are now something we are what's called a child safe serving organization, where we went through a process where we were completely audited. I mean, they looked in every nook and cranny, every file. They interviewed every staff member. They interviewed a bunch of volunteers. They interviewed a bunch of board members. I mean, they really dug in and talked to us about where we have some weak spots, where somebody who doesn't have the best of intentions could get through. And so, and we learned a lot from that. And it's really great to share some of those insights. And I know that PARB members don't necessarily have access to the actual child necessarily, but their mindset is so important at what they pick up on and what they think is okay and not okay when they're reading through a file. You want someone who thinks he's thinking right, and seeing this with, a culturally competent lens and all of that. So those are those things to of course look for. Follow-up questions are everything. If you're like, that's interesting, you can just be like, okay, tell me more about that. I think I need to know more to really know what we're talking about, and be very open about that. Off the cuff comments can be every bit as telling as a background check. We ask people, have you ever abused or neglected a child? And of course people are like, no. But every once in a great blue moon. I remember I had one woman, her background check was completely clear. References were great, all of that. And she was like, well, what do you mean by abuse? And I was like, okay. And so I told her, I was like, well, here's the state's definition of abuse, which is a lot more lax than mine. There's a lot more things I would call abuse than the state does. And so I was like, well, here's what the state says is abuse. And she was like, well, then yeah. And I'm like, we had this talk. She couldn't be a CASA. She told me, yes, I've abused my children. I don't care how pristine your background check is. I don't care how wonderful your references said you are. You just told me you abused children. And she didn't say that she regretted that or anything like that. I mean, it's like, well, we can't do that. So those remarks and asking questions that are so uncomfortable to ask, it's important. It's very important.
With PARB, I think there's a subtlety about the information, because you need to know a lot about what's going on with this family, with this kid, to make a good recommendation.
Yeah.
But do you just want to know what's going on because you want to gossip about it? Because you just want to see someone having a rough time? I don't know, because you're just into the drama. I mean, and it looks the same, but it's what you do with it, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, are you just really, do you want some entertainment, like some reality TV in the form of a file?
Right, exactly.
And do they understand that they can't then look to their spouse or their whoever and be like, oh my gosh, when they're reading it at home and say, read this, oh my God,
Right. Well, and I've seen that. I was kind of impressed one time. I was in a very, very, very small town, and they were talking about a particular case and say, oh yeah, I see her in the grocery store all the time. She looked like she was doing pretty good. And it's kind of like they knew the people, which is going to happen in a small town, and there's nothing inherently wrong with knowing these people, the folks that you're reviewing. But it's, again, it's what you do with that information. And it sounded like in this particular case, it was all very much above board, where it could have caused someone a lot of problems,
Yeah, like, yeah, someone's got to be a vault. And I think it's a lot of times, and this is how we explain it a lot, is that just because you have access to this information, that does not mean it belongs to you. It's not your information. You can't give it away. It's not yours to give. And, the only reason you have access to this information is because a judge said you can for this specific purpose. And so it is
purpose, yes.
Yes, to serve in this way. And if you're using it for any other purpose, that is a real problem. And I think we all know that people don't necessarily get in trouble for it, but they could. And I think it's important to say that could cause you problems.
Well, it's just not helpful. It's just not helpful. If you're there just to talk, the point is to be helpful.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what
Don't
are
watch
your
soap opera.
Exactly. There's plenty of that on TV. Definitely. And references. Well, I'll get into that in a second. Oh yeah. So references. We require 3, so we ask for 5, just to make sure, because there's always that person whose mailbox is full, and you can never get a hold of. So I like to have at least one of those 3 be personal, and at least one of those 3 be professional. They'll often give us family members, and I call those family members, but I like to have at least 3 that aren't family members. But it's amazing the information you can get from someone's adult child or, the best friend they've known since 1st grade. It's pretty insightful, actually. So, and I know because I check a ton of references, and those can be mind numbing. It is one of my least favorite activities at work to check references for hours on end. But the quality of a phone call over email is just too significant to not just suck it up and do it. So I understand that, and I've said this to other CASA programs too. I understand that we're a large program and we have more resources people-wise than others, and so maybe there's other programs that aren't necessarily able to do that ideal of the phone call, but if you can, it's really worth it. So that's where we are. And we ask questions about, like, what are their hobbies? What do they do for fun? And also, like, how would you rate their ability to have good boundaries around children? And then clarify, have you ever seen anything that raised your eyebrow? Have you ever seen anything that you thought was inappropriate? And those are, people are kind of caught off guard by those questions because they're not typical reference questions, but this isn't a typical gig either. So here we are. And it's an important thing to know. And the good thing about doing it by the phone is when there's a hesitation, you hear it, and they might, if you get it by email and they just put no, you might not know that they were silent for a minute and then they said, not really. I mean, no, that is different than, oh, no. It's different. And when you do it over the phone, you get that, and you wouldn't otherwise. Because I would follow up and say, you hesitated, please tell me why. And this is confidential, I'm not going to tell them what you said. But I do need to know if there's a reason for your hesitation. Your policies. So, when I gave the example of the woman who was otherwise totally clear, but then it was like, oh yeah, I've used my kids. Yeah, that's, do your policies support you being able to make those decisions? If they say, hey, wait a minute, I meet this and this requirement though, will your policies affirm what they're saying? And that's, and not allow you to act on those red flags and act on those pink flags and decline someone's admittance as a PARB member because of them saying concerning things that lead you to believe that they're not a good fit. So it's really taking a look at your policies, because you have to adhere to your policies, but it's also like, do we need to change some stuff? And I know that might be more complicated for you all than it is for us. We're pretty, if we see something wrong in our policies, we're going to have a meeting, we're going to talk about it, we're going to go to the board, we're going to, and maybe in a couple of months, we can actually make a policy change. I know that might be more complicated for you all, but at least to know and voice and be able to like maybe start a conversation if you need more, and then on the other end of that, if you get, I don't want to look into something and see a concern that's not there and get too nitty gritty and too critical and too suspicious where I accuse somebody who's a decent person of not being a decent person or they're a good fit, and I say, oh, you're not a good fit because you said this little thing wrong or you hesitated here. I don't want to be like that. And but I think we all know that when you do this screening over and over, day in and day out, you can get like that. And so that's why I would say multiple perspectives in decision making. And that can be, is there another someone who coordinates? If you're the only like staff person, is there another staff person with another PARB board, and the two of you can say, hey, when I have a tough decision, can we go over this together? I'll do it for you, you do it for me. But to have multiple people taking a look at something and saying, am I being crazy here, or should I be as concerned as I am? And that's important because I like to think my brain's pretty good, but it's only one brain, and I like to use the brains of the people around me too. So it's really looking at your policies and seeing, is there something that needs to be changed? And in the meantime, what do I need to do to work within my policies when it comes to screening people? So those policies are very, very important. So I guess, so retention is so important, obviously. And I know that that can be a battle. But burnout prevention, erring on the side of not giving them too much, because I think, you probably have people like we do who come in and they are so motivated and they are so excited to do this. And it is all from the really wonderful intentions. They want to do so much and they want to take on more. And then, a few months in, they're like, oh, okay, I'm overwhelmed. And so we kind of have to police that for them and say, I'm glad you want to do so much. Let's start you here and then see how you feel in a few months. And if we want to give you more, okay. And really kind of police that and say, even if they're like, I promise, you can say, I believe you, but please indulge me, because I've had this conversation with other people before. I'm sure you mean it, but just let me be paranoid, put it on you, a little self-deprecation, usually puts people off guard. You can be like, yeah, I'm just paranoid. Do this for me. Start slow for me. And people tend to respond well to that. So a sense of the community and belonging is so important. And I think it sounds like you have that a lot when you have those smaller PARB boards who are like, this is our group, this is what we do, and they're in it. Like that sense of community is the kind of thing that keeps people. So it sounds like you have a lot of boards where that is major strength. And that's awesome.
I think that is really one of our linchpins on the ones that do it for a long time, is they have again, a lot of times we have retired folks who that might be their main interaction every month with their board, and they've had relationships for years. And that's why I'm always encouraging the informal conversations and there's the getting the work done in a timely manner, and then there's relationship and time for chit chat, and trying to strike that good balance, I think, is important. And I'm never offended if a meeting takes a while to get started because people are catching up about how their month went, stuff like that.
Oh, and that's great, because they become friends, and and you're going to have more honest conversations with people that you know well. You're going to say, okay, I'm totally hearing you, but think about this perspective. You know, if you're dealing with people you know well, you're going to feel more comfortable doing that than someone you don't know. And that's just so true. And so fostering that, and like you said, you're not offended if it takes a while to get started. Allow for that. It's important. That camaraderie keeps people, it becomes a big part of their identity. You know, I tell people, you know, CASA is going to become not just something you do, it's going to become part of who you are. And you want to foster that environment of having that feeling, because it keeps people even when it's hard. And when they feel that relationship with you too, they're more likely to come to you and say, okay, I just had a really scary diagnosis and my priorities are going to have to shift for the next 4 to 6 months to address this. They're more likely to come to you if they have a rapport with you, if they see you as not just the person who supervises them while they do this volunteer work, but a friend and someone who cares about them. And so fostering that is huge for retention, but also just that recognition and appreciation. I think both in person, pulling someone aside or sending them an email and saying, hey, I just want you to know, like, some of the stuff you said tonight I thought was really insightful, and I think it's not the kind of thing that everyone thinks of, and I just want you to know I think that's so useful and so beneficial to the case, and you know, you're benefiting some children who will never know that you exist, and that's really a big deal. And really kind of from your heart giving them that, and praise it in front of everybody, saying like, you are so right. I didn't even think about that. Like that is so useful. And I'm so glad you're here tonight, because I don't know that any of the rest of us were thinking along those lines. And stuff like that is like, you know, they're feeling, hey, I'm important here. I'm needed here. I'm being used here. My perspective is valuable. So all of that stuff is just so important when they feel that sense of accomplishment. Am I spinning my wheels? And am I just running on a treadmill and doing all this work and not getting anywhere? And so when they are getting somewhere, you know, pointing it out to everybody. So depending on the person, some people don't like that.
Well, you said depending on the person. I mean, if you don't mind me interject real quick, one thing that I've heard before that I agree in is volunteers don't work for free. They work for either because they want to make a difference, so they need to feel like they're making a difference, or just these things kind of listed here. They want relationships. Mm-hmm. They want to, you know, they want it on their resume for the next job. You know, there's something that's motivating them, and so making sure that you hit that, you know, figure out what is motivating them and trying to make sure that is there.
Yeah, that they're getting it. You know, if they want it on a resume, well, say, you know, make sure they know that, hey, letters of recommendation are also a thing, you know, like, because that tells that the person that they're sending this resume to that not only did I do this, I did it well. And that is, you know, we talk because people who are receiving the resumes, they know people sign up for something, never do it, or never do a good job, or never invest in it, never put in the work, and it's still in that resume because no one's going to police that. But if there's a letter of recommendation that goes along with it, that's a whole other ballgame. And so, yeah, you're right. That's figure out what motivates them, you know. But definitely. And that's, you know, we talked about being more well known. You know, the more people that say, oh, I'm a PARB board member, and the more people that are like, oh, really, wow, you know, instead of what in the world is that? That's compelling to that, you know, that sense of community and pride. Having moments, even if it's just like once or twice a year, that is just for that fellowship, that community building, that, hey, we appreciate you. Let's take a minute and just enjoy each other. You know, those are important. And oh, I put supervisor group emails. That's kind of a term with CASA, but it's keeping everyone in the loop. Like all your PARB board members should know the basics of what's going on in the organization. Making sure anything that they can know, making sure they do know. It makes them feel like I'm not just this accessory who's taking orders, like I'm a part of this. I know what's up, you know, and that's important. I think that makes people feel right, feel good about it, and their position in it. And, you know, people want to feel important, and that's okay. Like that's a natural human need, is to feel significant. And so I think there are ways that aren't that hard that you can do that. It's just consistently remembering to do it. So and celebrating all those successes. Like, you know, if you review stuff and then you're on to the next set of cases that you're reviewing, what if you get some good feedback from the judge? You know, so 6 months later when you're meeting and say, hey, you guys, FYI, I got a little note, or I heard that the judge said something about how useful that feedback was. I just wanted to let you all know. I know that was a while ago and you might not totally remember that case, but the judge took notice of and found this incredibly helpful. And you know, those are the kinds of things that are so easy to fall at the bottom of a to-do list when you've got some major things going on. And I get it, I do it. There's so many things that I want to do and I don't make a priority in that realm. So I totally get it. But it is beneficial, and it is, I think makes a difference, and really speaks to volunteers in that way. And then, oh my gosh, questions and answers. I kept thinking how much, I don't want to go over time, but yeah, what questions, thoughts?
Well, this is amazing. I mean, and you know, I don't think we made it clear at the beginning that besides me being a staff person, Kim is a staff person for Tulsa, and
Right.
Christina is the staff person for Oklahoma County.
Oh, perfect.
So we are definitely doing these, and I've learned a lot, especially about screening, and
Good.
definitely at staff meeting on Friday, Kim and Christina, we need to spend some time on the application process, which I think, Kim, you already knew that. So anyway, yeah, this is really good. And I wanted to go back, if we got a minute. Well, I mean, I don't want to, if anyone has any questions, I don't want to monopolize any time. Anybody have thoughts or questions? All right, then I'll keep talking then. I'm having a hard time finding the slide right now. Oh, there it is. Slide number 3, taking stock. How are they recruited? That's something that I think we need to talk about, because our folks get recruited in a lot of different ways. I think mostly they hear from other PARB members in a community, but sometimes they see something on Facebook, and so it's a bit of a cold call, so to speak. No one's really talked to them, so they don't really know what's going on. And so then when it's a cold call like that, especially in a rural community, which is the ones that I deal with the most, I've got to make sure that the local chair is not going to be worried about this particular person. And then, well, I mean, they're small communities, and it might be, I mean, literally in 2 counties, it's the Sunday school class is the PARB board. And they may not necessarily want someone new in that group. I mean, I think they're somewhat open, but I'm just saying you have to be careful. And, you know, and then also, I think a lot of times people depend on the judge to identify people. And that's, if you're waiting for the judge to bring in your people, you're gonna be waiting a long time.
Talk about bottom of the to-do list, yeah. Your judge, like, no.
Yeah. Anyway, just for the benefit of especially the rural folks that are still on the call, you know, think about how people are recruited, and if you want your board to look like how you want your board, you should do your own recruitment. Don't wait for me Don't wait for me or the judge to recruit somebody.
It's hard. It's hard without a crystal ball to really know. But
And thinking about also, you know, what makes someone a really good PARB member, that's something I think is important to think of too, and then identify. Thinking that when we'll talk about that at staff meeting and figure out ways to recruit more of those folks.
yeah, we figured out it's more than just demographics, it's a mindset. And you know, there are certain things you want to hear them say, or certain things that they say and you're like, you know, that lead you to a different mindset. It's interesting. It's such a soft science sometimes, I think, this kind of thing. But yeah. Well, and I can send you, and I sent you the presentation. So I mean, feel free to ask, you know, if you have any more questions or need something else from me, I'm happy to help. Just let me know. I'm around.
Okay, is your contact information? I will, if you don't mind, I'm going to include your contact information then.
Oh, please, yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty easy to hunt down.
Okay. Well, you know, you didn't know me from Adam, and I really appreciate the cold call and you stepping up and doing this. This is super helpful information.
Oh, good. We've had some good insight in our about like over the last several years, and it's like, I mean, the more we can share it, the better, I think. So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Anybody else have any parting thoughts or? You know, who was caller 2, by the way? I didn't ever catch your name. Who called in? They might be in the middle of something else at this point. Okay.
Yeah, taking a phone call.
All right. Well, with that, I guess we will just leave it, and appreciate it, Kathy, and we will see everybody next Tuesday, I guess.
Thank you all. This was a fun conversation.
Good. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.